I want to suggest 4 considerations in deciding whether or not to enter into a dialogue. Number 1, or the first one, is impact. What are the short-term and long-term impacts or consequences of the conflict? What's at stake? And how high are the stakes? And are the stakes high enough that they're going to impact your long-term well-being or your success? And obviously, the higher the impact, the more likely you're going to want to bring up the conflict. Number 2 is risk. Are you putting yourself or your relationship at risk by addressing the conflict? Or to what extent are you putting it at risk? What do you have to lose by bringing it up? What's the worst that could happen? What's the best that could happen? What do you believe is most likely to happen? You want to know that the potential rewards for addressing the conflict are greater than the risks. So number 3, rewards. What do you have to gain by working through this conflict? What's the best that could happen? How could life for you and for other people be better? And what are all the likely positive outcomes, the rewards? The greater the rewards, the more that it's going to make sense to engage in conflict resolution. And 4th is confidence. How confident are you in initiating and facilitating dialogue? Do you have the personal presence to remain even-keeled and persistent as you get into the middle of negotiating? Are you willing to trust yourself and also trust the process? Well, you know, the answers to these questions are not always clear at the outset. Sometimes you choose to initiate dialogue and then you do your best to make it succeed. Most of the time it's going to go well if you stay with the process and you stay with the principles that I'm teaching. Once in a while it won't. And that has to be okay. It has to be okay to know that sometimes you're going to fail or not get the outcome that you wanted. Otherwise, you're never going to get in the game. You're never going to take the risk. During those times, you simply have to reflect on what you can learn and then continue looking for more opportunities, new opportunities to learn these skills. As you do so, you're becoming a more powerful person, by the way, a leader, even if informal, an influencer for good in the circles in which you run. Well, of course, going back to confidence, a lot of the decision of whether or not to initiate has to do with your confidence in being able to pull it off. So for that reason, I don't recommend you start practicing dialogue with your toughest situations. Start using the skill when the stakes are not as high and the consequences not as far-reaching. Start in a relationship that feels a little more equal and where your opportunity to influence the outcomes is greater. I'm not encouraging you when I say this to avoid conflict, but I am encouraging you to be realistic. As you get better, you can step up to the harder, the more difficult conflicts, particularly those in which there's a differential in power or authority within the relationship. So I want to say that it's important to know who and what you're dealing with. Not all conflicts are the same. Some are quite simple and they're events that have little long-term consequences. But others are more complex with longer-term ramifications. And most important is to know something about the person or the persons with whom you're going to be negotiating. Although the basic principles and the process are the same, you'll adopt a different persona depending on the person that you're negotiating with. Entering into a dialogue with a child obviously is going to be very different than with your boss. Starting a conversation with somebody who's an accommodator is going to be different than with somebody who's a dominator. Some people are really tough negotiators and they aren't accustomed to win-win outcomes. So you have to be bolder with these people. You have to advocate your own point of view a little bit harder while still following the basic principles that I outlined in this program. One final thought I want to share with you is that not every negotiation is going to succeed, really for 2 reasons. One is that sometimes issues are protracted and the personalities involved may not see the value of dialogue. You work to help them understand this value in the way you facilitate the process, which, the steps which I'll be teaching you in the next session. But not everybody is going to get it, and sometimes you won't succeed. A second reason that not every negotiation will succeed is that not every conflict is resolvable, frankly, something that John Gottman points out in his work on marriage. There are solvable problems an unsolvable problems. For a couple, an unsolvable problem might be a difference in religious beliefs or maybe differences in parenting styles. In a business, an unsolvable problem might be an ongoing tension between engineering that cares about quality and sales who wants the product fast and cheap. These departments may come up with some agreements to manage their conflict, but the tension is likely to remain. So living with unresolvable conflicts is part of life, kind of like dealing with a bum knee. So in the next lecture is a case study. It's a real example of me really taking a risk and confronting my employer back when I was a graduate student at the University of Minnesota.